In a development that has captured national attention, the United States Supreme Court has been linked to discussions around urgent legal changes that could affect gun laws across multiple states. Reports and commentary circulating online suggest that certain rulings or legal interpretations could begin reshaping policies on concealed carry, firearm classifications, and even how marijuana use intersects with gun ownership. At the center of the conversation is a critical question about how quickly legal interpretations can influence real-world enforcement, and whether the public fully understands what is actually changing versus what is being speculated. But here's the question. Are these so-called emergency changes truly backed by official Supreme Court rulings, or is the situation being misunderstood? Let me know your answer in the comments below. To understand what is really happening, it's important to begin with the verified legal background. The Supreme Court of the United States does not typically issue emergency rulings that broadly rewrite federal gun laws within a fixed timeline like 30 days. Instead, the court handles cases brought before it, often reviewing constitutional questions related to the Second Amendment, which protects the right to keep and bear arms. According to official court procedures, decisions are issued after extensive briefing, oral arguments, and internal deliberation. In some situations, the court may issue emergency orders, often referred to as rulings on the shadow docket. But these are usually temporary decisions on whether a law remains in effect while litigation continues. In recent years, one of the most significant Supreme Court decisions related to firearms was New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin in 2022. According to the court's official opinion, this case addressed whether New York's requirement for individuals to demonstrate proper cause to obtain a concealed carry license was constitutional. The court held that such requirements violated the Second Amendment, emphasizing that individuals have a right to carry firearms in public for self-defense. This decision prompted multiple states to reevaluate their gun licensing systems, particularly those with stricter may-issue frameworks. However, it is important to note that even after Bruin, states retained the authority to regulate firearms within certain constitutional limits. For example, restrictions on sensitive locations, background checks, and licensing procedures remain areas of ongoing legal interpretation. Turning to the issue of marijuana and gun ownership, the legal situation becomes more complex. Under federal law, marijuana remains classified as a controlled substance. According to the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, individuals who are considered unlawful users of controlled substances are prohibited from possessing firearms under federal statute. At the same time, several states have legalized marijuana for medical or recreational use. This creates a legal tension between federal law and state-level legalization. Courts have begun to examine whether this federal restriction is consistent with the Second Amendment, especially in light of recent Supreme Court rulings emphasizing historical tradition as the standard for evaluating gun laws. In some federal district court cases, judges have questioned whether banning firearm possession solely based on marijuana use aligns with historical firearm regulations. However, these decisions are limited in scope and may apply only within specific jurisdictions unless upheld by higher courts. Another area of public concern involves AR-15 style rifles. These firearms are often at the center of legislative debates and legal challenges. Some states have enacted laws restricting or banning certain semi-automatic rifles, classifying them as assault weapons. Legal challenges to these laws are ongoing, with plaintiffs arguing that such bans violate the Second Amendment. Courts have issued varying decisions, and in some instances, cases have been appealed to higher courts, potentially setting the stage for future Supreme Court review. Despite widespread online claims, there is currently no verified Supreme Court ruling mandating nationwide changes to AR-15 ownership within a 30-day period. Legal changes in this area typically occur through a combination of court decisions, legislative action, and regulatory updates. As for concealed carry laws, the impact of the Bruin decision continues to unfold. Some states have modified their licensing requirements, while others have introduced new regulations intended to comply with the court's guidance. Legal challenges to these new laws are ongoing, and courts are continuing to interpret how far states can go in regulating public carry. One interpretation of the current legal landscape is that the Supreme Court has set a broader framework emphasizing historical precedent, leaving lower courts to apply that framework to specific cases. Another perspective raised in court filings is that this approach creates uncertainty, as judges must determine which historical analogies are relevant when evaluating modern firearm regulations. This is for informational purposes and not legal advice. A key turning point in this evolving situation is the shift toward the history and tradition test established in recent Supreme Court decisions. Rather than using balancing tests that weigh public safety against individual rights, courts are now focusing on whether a regulation is consistent with historical firearm laws at the time of the founding. This shift has significant implications. For example, laws that lack clear historical parallels may face increased legal scrutiny. At the same time, governments argue that modern conditions require updated regulations that address contemporary risks. Another important moment involves the growing number of federal cases addressing the intersection of marijuana use and gun ownership. Some rulings have suggested that automatic firearm prohibitions for marijuana users may not withstand constitutional review, while others have upheld existing federal restrictions. These differing outcomes highlight the fragmented nature of the current legal environment. Until higher courts, potentially including the Supreme Court, provide more definitive guidance, variations in interpretation are likely to continue. It is also important to consider how information spreads in the digital age. Claims of emergency rulings or immediate nationwide legal changes can gain traction quickly, even when they are not supported by official court decisions. Verifying information through reliable sources, such as court opinions, government agencies, and reputable legal analysis is essential. From a legal standpoint, changes to gun laws typically occur through a structured process. This may involve legislative action at the state or federal level, followed by legal challenges that move through the court system. Supreme Court decisions can have a significant impact, but they do not usually impose instant, across-the-board changes within a fixed time frame like 30 days. Looking ahead, several pending cases could influence the future of gun laws in the United States. These may address issues such as firearm restrictions, licensing requirements, and the rights of specific groups under the Second Amendment. Legal analysts note that the court's current approach places emphasis on constitutional text and historical context. This may lead to further challenges to existing regulations, as well as new legal arguments aimed at defining the boundaries of permissible firearm laws. At the same time, public policy debates continue at both state and federal levels. Legislators, advocacy groups, and legal experts are actively engaged in discussions about how to balance individual rights with public safety concerns. In conclusion, while there is significant discussion surrounding potential changes to gun laws, it is essential to distinguish between verified legal developments and speculative claims. The Supreme Court plays a critical role in interpreting the Constitution, but its decisions follow a formal process and are documented through official opinions. Understanding these processes helps provide clarity in a rapidly evolving legal landscape. It also underscores the importance of relying on accurate information when evaluating claims about major legal changes. So now, looking at the facts and the current legal framework, do you think recent court decisions are strengthening constitutional protections, or do they create uncertainty in how gun laws are applied across different states? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you want more in-depth, fact-based breakdowns of major legal developments, make sure to subscribe for future videos.